I'm just going to show a quick slide of the agenda. We have the session recording now. It will be shared via Innovate UK's Net Zero Living Programme web pages. This is the agenda. I'm going to hand over very shortly to Cara from Innovate UK, who's going to talk about the programme in its broader sense. I will talk a little bit about the handbook that we have prepared to help identify opportunities for creating place-based impact, directed and oriented towards local authorities and their delivery partners. We will then move on to perspectives from places. So I'm delighted that Nusrath is here from Perth and Kinross, and we've also got Runnymede, myself, Stuart from Runnymede, who will be speaking about what they have learned along the way. And then we'll return to Cara for a summary of programme impact, and then we've got a little bit of time for some Q&A at the end and a call to action for you all. So let's proceed. Just in terms of today's session, Cara, can I just hand over to you to introduce yourself, please?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Cara Cartwright. I'm an innovation lead at Innovate UK and have been working on the Net Zero Living Programme since its inception back in 2022. Thanks.
Thank you. And I'm Dinah Jackson. I work at a small consultancy called Urban Foresight, a place-based consultancy, and I've been involved in the programme supporting Cara and the team with the capacity building support that's been provided to all of the places that have been taking part. Just a little slide on who we are. We will skip over that. In terms of housekeeping, please keep muted during the course of the session. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. It's always good to know who else is on the call, and you may want to follow up contacts that you make on this hour in due course. If you have any questions during the course of the session, please post them in the chat as well. And just to confirm that the event is being recorded so that it can be shared across the Net Zero Living website. So, Cara, I will hand over to you. Thank you.
I think it might be easier, Dinah, if you don't mind controlling the slides, if that's
okay.
Of course,
yes. Yeah.
Brilliant. So as I say, the Net Zero Living Programme started back in 2022, and I guess just to start by reflecting, in the last 3.5 years, we've seen a huge amount of change happen. So back in 2022, the Ukraine war started, and that was like really threw into the public kind of domain the importance of energy resilience and energy security, which has been quite a turning point for us as a nation. But also between October 22 and March 24, the UK experienced the wettest 18 months on record, which was countered also by the fact that we experienced our first 40 degrees heat wave. And a few other things just to kind of cast your mind back in 2022. That's when Queen Elizabeth II passed away. Between 2022 and now, we've had a new Prime Minister. We have a new US President in place. So lots of political changes happening across the landscape. But we've also seen an increase in things like renewable generation across our network. So back in 2021, the UK managed 2.5 hours of 100% renewable electricity generation, comparing that to kind of 2024 now, where half of our electricity is powered by renewables on average. We've seen demand for electric vehicles increase from sort of 16% again back in 2022 through to about 24%. So steady increase that we're seeing in terms of that change. And we've seen over 100,000 heat pump applications for funding and over 500,000 solar panels installed. So quite a lot of change on sort of both sides of the equation in terms of trying to decarbonise, but also seeing the impacts of climate change. And when I speak about this, I kind of feel sometimes it can be quite overwhelming to think about the size of the challenge that we need to achieve in terms of delivering net zero and delivering decarbonisation. And quite often our actions can feel quite insignificant almost in terms of the scale of what is required. But the Net Zero Living Programme, what we aim to do here was really ground ourselves in what is really important to people, and what we can really focus in on is that something that we all relate to, and that's about the places that we live and we work in. And if we focus in on what we want for our places, then we want our homes to be warmer. We want to be healthier. We want to have cheaper bills. We want secure jobs. We want local growth, cleaner air. And doing this and achieving those aims for our places, we can do that in a way that also helps us to decarbonise the way that we live and helps to deliver net zero. Next slide, please, Dinah. So our programme, we've funded 50 places across the UK to test and try innovative ways to deliver better outcomes for the residents of those places and to deliver net zero. Now, as the UK's innovation agency, we know that a lot of technology already exists. And yes, we do want to keep funding those technologies. We need new solutions. We need to improve what we have. But also, we need to really unlock the demand for those solutions, which are going to help businesses to grow and to scale and to create better places for the people who live and work, and also accelerate our progress towards net zero. So taking a place-based approach has really helped us to enable new ideas. Sorry, could you go on mute, please? Thank you. So taking a place-based approach has enabled new ideas to be tried and tested. And we've worked with our partners to find new ways to engage with citizens and businesses and building stronger plans for places, finding new and innovative ways of financing those plans, using and understanding and exploring data and how that can support our decision making better, and as well as understanding the influence and impact of policy and regulation. Okay, Dinah. And so in terms of our programme, we decided to take a different approach. And so we've really had a big focus on trying to build capacity across places through developing the knowledge and skills through our projects and through the support from our project partners. We've established a really strong community of practice thanks to our partners, Foresight, We Are Liminal and Forum for the Future. And that community has really enabled peer learning and knowledge exchange to happen, as well as supporting the development of new collaborations. And then we've also delivered project funding that's enabled those 50 places to test models and build tools to find ways to stimulate that local market growth. And so just to kind of give a really small flavour of some of our projects that we've been looking at. So the Forest of Dean, for example, have really focused in on improving carbon literacy across their organisation to make sure they're building a carbon aware culture who are building that into their everyday decisions. Caerphilly, for example, have really reached out to those previously hard to reach residents, really trying to understand their needs and the barriers that they have in their places, and how the council's decarbonisation strategy can really support them. We've had Westmoreland and Furness looking at circular economy within their area, but also they've had to deal with establishing new governance as they've become a unitary authority through this process. And Perth and Kinross, who we're going to hear from in a bit, have really explored retrofit and transport challenges across their area, and understanding more about kind of what skills they currently have, how they can use those skills, and how they need to be moulded and shaped to support a transition to net zero. Okay. And so one of the things at the heart of our programme has not just been about delivering those projects and helping our cohort, but it's also about creating resources that everybody can use to help them to achieve their decarbonisation goals. And we've got a huge amount of resources. And today we're covering our Creating Better Places handbook and resource packs, which bring together the learnings from across our cohort, and try to bring that together so that others can use and borrow those. And you can find all of our information on our web pages at the moment, with all the latest updates there. Okay. And so, I'm going to hand you over to Dinah now, who's going to take us through the Creating Better Places handbook and the resource packs that bring together, like I say, the really key learning from the programme, practical tools and case studies, so everybody can learn from our programme and help to accelerate their action and their activities. Thanks.
Thank you, Cara. So yes, the Creating Better Places handbook. The handbook is published on the Innovate UK website, as Cara says. I'll pop when we get towards the end of the call, I'll pop the link in the chat. Our work as Urban Foresight, working with Forum and We Are Liminal, has been to collect and synthesise insight from the local authorities, and that started right at the beginning of our involvement in the programme in September 2023. The Creating Better Places handbook is one of the outputs of the work that we've been doing as in that community and knowledge sharing delivery partner role. And we started from the premise that most of net zero guidance in the UK sits within one of two modes. It's either a policy mode, so that's what government should do, what targets are required, and so on. And then there's a technology mode, and that's fundamentally about the solutions that exist or are being developed, how they work, and what carbon benefits they bring. Both are necessary, but neither is fully sufficient for local delivery. We believe that this handbook, the Creating Better Places handbook, is a third mode, and that's about operating reality. And we've devised it as a handbook for local authorities and their delivery partners based on that operating reality concept. And it identifies areas where local innovation can improve lives and unlock growth. And that is all born from and founded in the experience of the 50 places on the programme that Cara mentioned. It presents opportunities from across places that have been participating in the Net Zero Living programme for using net zero as the how to make change for good rather than the what. And also to overcome barriers to progress. That's been a very important part of the work, is helping the places that have been involved to overcome barriers, which we've termed non-technological barriers to progress. So why does this matter? Well, I want to just give a little bit more about the context for this Creating Better Places series of the handbook and resource packs. We've built it on a concept that climate action is not a separate agenda. We have heard that repeatedly from all of the projects and the places that we've been working with over the last 2.5 years. And when climate action is embedded well, and that, when I say climate action, I include all forms of decarbonisation within that. When it's embedded well within local authority structures, within local authority governance, and within strategy and operations, it is a powerful lever to improve outcomes for residents, to support place-based renewal, to support resilient economic growth and business growth as a part of that. So we set out with 3 things in mind. One, that we sought to help Innovate UK and the places themselves to articulate the non-technological barriers to delivery and to articulate what those barriers were and what the solutions were, but critically how places went about devising solutions and putting them into practice. And that was through, as Cara mentioned, the peer-to-peer learning community and the technical and systems change support that was provided through the programme. Cara's also mentioned the changing operating environment. So when we started in August 2023, net zero delivery was operating in a relatively stable policy environment. We know that has changed over the last couple of years, and that change seems to have picked up pace in the last 12 months. National signals have become less consistent, the public debate is more contested, and local authorities are delivering under increasing and greater uncertainty in terms of their operating environment. And then within that context, how delivery continues when conditions change is as important now as it has ever been. And it's as important as understanding the technologies. So technologies evolve for sure, but how delivery continues when conditions are changing. Cara mentioned the change in governance within one of the councils, for example. We know that things are going to be changing this year in May when there are elections across the UK. So there are different aspects that need to be considered, and they're quite nuanced. But all of that is important in terms of helping teams and lead officers to really make those change come alive. And to do so, we do that by listening, and that's systematic listening to what local authorities and delivery partners are learning, and playing that back, and then developing particular themes and pathways that we can articulate to a wider community. So we've written this for the local authorities. It is from local authorities for local authorities. Our role has been to collect, collate and synthesize information. The information comes from the intelligence and the experience of the local authorities that have participated in the programme and their delivery partners. It is designed to help places across the UK, so it's not place specific. It applies to local authorities regardless of characteristic and regardless of whether they're England, Scotland, Wales or Northern Ireland based. But it's designed to help them speed up duplication, avoid duplication, speed up delivery and achieve better outcomes more efficiently and more effectively. To help local authorities and their partners to do that, it provides an overview of where the participating places have done things differently. It describes opportunities for local innovation, which we framed as 10 familiar areas of local delivery that can enable better outcomes. And just really underscoring this point that those are founded on the experience of places that have participated in that Net-Zero Living programme. And thirdly, it provides a practical learning guide for you to use, and that can be for you at the start of a journey. It can be to come back to when things are evolving or there's a new programme in sight to meet targets that you've identified, and you can use it to start, scale or replicate action. So a very important component of this, coming back to the point about avoiding duplication, speeding up delivery and achieving outcomes more efficiently and effectively, you can dip into practical, tried and tested steps and experiences from local authorities, understand the key concepts that local authorities and their partners have sort of identified for the places involved, and tap into further resources. Those resources include tools, methodologies, different approaches, templates, and so on. So there's a wealth of tools that are included within the handbook and the resource packs that you can tap into in the belief and understanding that they have been used by places that have participated in the programme. So they're tried and tested from that point of view. So insight from experience. This learning matters now, for sure, and it affects most local authorities, not all local authorities and their delivery partners. There are three core concepts at the heart of this, which is about enabling local authorities and their partners to act, embedding new practice and new behaviour and new strategy and organisational capability, and enacting through that reorganisation of capability, the increase in capacity, the increase in capability as a result of learning from what others have done and putting those things into practice. We recognise within the handbook that there are some hard parts. It is hard to get decisions made inside complex organisations, and we know that local authorities are complex at every scale. So from a relatively small district right the way through to a regional narrow combined authority, there is complexity, and complexity is difficult to manage, and managing change through complexity is hard. It's also hard to sustain direction through elections and restructures within the local authority environment. It's difficult to align finance, procurement, skills and delivery roles. All of those are changing at slightly different times, not necessarily changing in the same directions. And there are different start and stop points and different levels of stickiness. And it's also tricky to build enough trust so that residents and businesses will do more than participate, but will feel engaged and beyond feel empowered to be part of the change that is required. We know these themes aren't new ideas, but what we believe has been missing in the UK discourse is a clear and usable account of how councils tackle those hard things in practice, especially when the ground is moving. And that's what we've designed the handbook and the resource packs to respond to. So how to use it? I've put it together as a compass, not a map. So it is not a handbook that claims originality of ideas. It is not a handbook that gives you a step-by-step checklist of what to do in the order in which to do it. Change is not linear. So what we've done within this output is to demonstrate consistency of patterns across the 50 places that have taken part. And those are patterns within governance, legitimacy, coordination of projects within services and across services, and from a local authority with delivery partners, and continuity. They are all widely acknowledged to be important, but are rarely designed for explicitly in the design of programmes, and that's something in which Innovate UK have excelled in terms of this programme. The value of the handbook is making them explicit delivery levers, and we've tried to call out here what what it would have been helpful to know at the start of the process, and flagged out or called out the issues that have been emerging, and what has been tried and tested, and where the common pitfalls are. All within the context that this is within an innovation programme. Innovation programmes often focus on what is new. This programme is focused on what is necessary, but there is innovation absolutely across all pieces of that in terms of what is new to the local authority, in terms of its process, its systems, its originality of ideas. But so it can be something that can feel quite small, but actually that is innovation within the context of the local authority and how it works with delivery partners, or it can be something that is actually quite huge in terms of taking on new technology. What all of that points to is that you can use this very flexibly. So each section of the handbook is designed to be read on its own. It includes signposts to other sources of information, largely the two other related sections within the resource pack that you might be in, and there are 10 in total, and between different sections of different resource packs. So it allows you to move quickly between strategic and operational context, and then practical approaches that have been tried and tested by the places that have participated. You might want to focus on governance, be interested in leadership. It might be system roles that are the thing that you're wanting to find out more about, or it could be the practical methods, the tools and examples from places. All are included across all 10 resource packs. In terms of what they contain in detail, this is the structure. So it tells you about each resource pack, it tells you about the opportunity. So for example, embedding citizens at the centre of place-based change, insights from places, and there are insights from 3 places in each of the resource packs. Number 10 is slightly different in that focuses on the demonstrator places. There are key concepts, there are practical steps that you can take. So that speaks to the replication and the scaling. There are tools and resources that you can use. They're tried and tested, as I say, by places participating. And then there are signposts to further reading, so wider resources that have been recommended by places that have participated in Net Zero Living. And then what else helps? Well, just to reiterate the fact about the tools and resources, that they are critical for any practical guide to be of use to you in your place. Tools and resources are highly interesting and highly valuable. And within that, there are particular templates, matrices that you can use, decision-making aids, and so on. So they are tools that have been used, methods that have been used that you can apply to your own particular circumstances in your place. Helps you understand how to navigate in the knowledge and uncertainty that somebody else has navigated it to. Really delighted now to hand over to you, Nusrat. Would you like me to continue to drive the slides for you?
Yes, please, Diana. That'll be good.
No problem.
Thank you.
There we go.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. Next slide, please. Yes. Right. So, thank you for the opportunity. So I'll be sharing our experience on delivering a place-based inclusive net zero pathway. So for context, what I'll be sharing more on is the net zero living scale and embed retrofit data accelerator strand 2 work that we have been doing. And this was a project on a very tight deadline of 5 months and a very tight budget. So we are very proud of what we've managed to pull together. We built the project on the smart metering and smart monitoring, which the council has been doing beforehand, but expanded it to a set of buildings that are essential parts of the community, but are often missed in large retrofit delivery projects, whether it's like heat pumps or solar panels or fabric retrofits. These smaller rural community buildings are often missed out. So let's talk about what we did in the project. So for us in this project, the starting point was very simple, but also a universal issue for many local authorities. Rural buildings are uncomfortable, expensive to heat, and incredibly difficult to manage, going through complex asset management reviews, as obviously what Dana just mentioned. So to add to this, Perth and Kinross is also very large and geographically diverse, which means that, the rural buildings are spread out and they face harsh weather, limited resources, don't meet, traditional funding criteria, and are often run by volunteers. So it was obvious that a one-size-fits-all heating solution simply didn't work here. So for us, the question to answer was, what's the most practical thing we can do right now to improve comfort and reduce waste without requiring major capital investment? And that's what led us to design this smart energy monitoring pilot. And we carried this out across 10 different rural buildings. So we made sure that we looked at a variety of buildings ranging from based on the size, the fuel types, the use, so that we can understand what a low-cost solution that is also repeatable, and hopefully other councils can understand how to make meaningful progress through this project. So that was the main idea behind the project. Next slide, please. So how did we do it? Once we understood the challenge, the next question for us was, how do we design something that works in reality and not like the ideal scenario, but the real one? And that's where this hybrid approach came in. And that included a few key decisions. And the first was around technology. So instead of choosing just one technology and pushing it across all the buildings, we matched each building to what was genuinely appropriate to it. So in a simpler, more predictable site, a simple technology like a domestic grade hive control was implemented. And what did this support? This supported us to do something that is affordable, easy to control, gave us clear scheduling, and also give us the remote visibility that we were missing for these rural community buildings. But in instances where there were multi-boiler plants and complex operational needs, then the domestic solution obviously was not the best option. So here we implemented a building management system, which is slightly costlier, but still give us better control and therefore justifies the cost. But again, we were very cautious of the fact that a full engineering interface would not work with communities, with volunteers. So we paired these systems with simple keypad controls that gave the community confidence without exposing them to complex systems. And the next one was around engagement. To support all of this, we reshaped our engagement because we noticed that formal training didn't work. We were dealing with volunteers, community people who were busy, who didn't have the technical know-how and just didn't feel comfortable, taking on additional responsibility. So what worked better were short, on-site demos of the installations, one-page quick guides, and casual conversations where people felt free to come and share what was and wasn't working with us. So reshaping engagement was another thing that we did to make this project a success. And the last one was around data and monitoring. We soon realized that the data itself is an issue and the data that we have is not perfect. There were many issues that, we faced, like, there were issues with logger faults, connectivity dropouts, there were weather issues, there was flooding in one building. So we had to adapt to all these issues and combine also the comfort aspect of, the data. So we used what we called an anomaly aware method. So instead of just depending on the data, we blended it with comfort feedback so that we can understand what's really happening on the ground. And it gave us the confidence to optimize the schedules and support the people using the buildings in a realistic manner. So this combination of systems, real monitoring and light engagement gave us a model that doesn't look perfect on paper. It's complex, but it worked in the real world. Next slide, please. So what did we learn? There were a few key things that came out of this project. First was flexibility is absolutely essential. Every rural building has its own ecosystem, own issues, own things that we had to deal with. So the solution had to match the context and not the other way around. And the second was around the importance of combining comfort and data to understand the full story. Yes, smart controls, did help us to optimize heating brilliantly, but they don't give us the full picture of the drafts, the cold spots, the perceived comfort of people in these spaces. So understanding where, fabric is a real problem, or what type of users use these buildings, help us to target future investment much better. And the third was around the importance of simplicity to drive adoption. When volunteers constantly told us like they preferred intuitive systems, minimal steps, clear escalation routes, and when the controls were easy to use, the buildings run better, and we saw that a significant drop in the complaints that we received as well. So this basically reinforces what was just shared, even in the Creating Better Places handbook as well. Like the biggest value is not in the technology. I think that was the key takeaway that we understood, but in the approach, it was in the decision-making framework, like the hybrid model that we adopted, the comfort feedback loops that we created. And these are the things that make this project scalable for other authorities with, rural buildings or rural community buildings. So our next step is to try and create a full year of post-installation data, and we will continue to refine a toolkit that can support other councils, again, to help to confidently replicate this model. And that's us. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Nusrat. That's really, really interesting. You've gone into lots of detail there, which is ever so helpful. If anybody's got questions for Nusrat, please pop them in the chat, because we'll come back to questions towards the end. But I'm now delighted to hand over to Marcel. I've got the slides for you here, Marcel, so you can just instruct me when to move through them.
Brilliant.
So
Thank
I'll
you,
hand over to you. You're welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yep. Good.
Yep, we can hear you fine. Thank you.
Excellent. So thank you, everyone, for this opportunity to run through what we've been busy with in Runnymede. Diana, could you have the next slide, please? So just to give you the basis of how we were approaching this, Runnymede was the pilot local authority for a group of authorities, which are collectively known as the Heathrow Strategic Planning Group. Anybody looking at the map will see that there is a big central point for our sub-region, which is Heathrow Airport, currently undergoing multiple changes and possible expansions in the very near future. And it has a real profound effect in terms of everything in the sub-region. So our work, although we were headlining, or we were heading it from the project perspective, the findings were collected and drawn from something in the order of about 11 boroughs across the area, which were both Surrey, county and at district and borough level, also other boroughs outside of London, but also London boroughs as well. So it's a collective view that we're giving today. And we worked on this with City Science as our private sector partners. Next slide, please, Dan. So the challenge, the original challenge which we were provided with by Innovate UK was to look at non-technical barriers to net zero. I won't go over the whole journey which we went through, which in itself was extremely informative. But we quickly narrowed down on the tack that we took was, is it possible to look at the areas that we as authorities in the public sector have influence over, either control or influence, and which are currently a problem, probably a cost, and is there some way in which we could look at that, utilizing that as a resource and as a valued product in order to create finance or financial reserves in order to address some of the net zero and climate change challenges which we are being presented with. With airport very much in our minds, one of the drives, one of the hardest industries to decarbonise, not least of which we don't have an electric plane yet, or at least not a commercially viable one, and it's unlikely that that will arrive anytime soon in the future. So we were looking, excuse me, sorry, I should have killed that. We were looking at what is the next alternative, and the biggest method of which the airport sector is looking at is the use of sustainable aviation fuel, or SAF. The main problem that, although there are international agreements as to the quantities and volumes of SAF that will be needed to create any sort of meaningful transformation, the feedstocks for SAF at this point in time, nationally, locally, and internationally, are relatively few. The methodologies themselves are still very much in development, but already there are some interesting things which are being brought forward as, or being accepted as de facto characters. The stressor for local authorities is that the legislative regime in which we are looking at how we operate as local authorities, and in the two-tier system, that's to be remembered that the districts and boroughs are the collection authorities, it's the county which is the disposal authority, so a split in responsibilities. But there is at this point in time regulation which is in the process of going through, looking at mandatory taxation on carbon emissions for industries which are heavily carbon emitting. And there is consideration at the moment of bringing waste to energy into that mandated system. If that happened, there are some potentially very significant repercussions in terms of cost of waste disposal, but also in terms of maintaining the waste hierarchy from recyclable materials at the highest, recycling material at the highest end, down to disposal to landfill at the lower end. And from a financial perspective, it could even be argued that whereas at the moment the emphasis is on recycle, reuse, actually it would become financially more viable to dispose to landfill, which is not a desired outcome. So are there ways in which we could use this cost and turn it into a high value product which would meet the demands, at least some of the demands, of decarbonising the aviation industry, whilst at the same time creating a revenue which could be invested into climate change? What we found was that local authorities on this aspect, although they recognise the implications and are constantly monitoring the changes in terms of regulations and compliance with respect to waste disposal, really they lacked the framework upon which to make a decision as to whether looking at this methodology is viable. I mentioned that we're early in the process of developing this sector, and yet already there are some myths which have become embedded and which people accept as fact. One of which is that for a SAF plant to be viable, it has to be in a location where land is probably cheap, where employment costs are perhaps lower, where energy is abundant. And so that means usually location at a distance from where the material itself will have to be used. It's also the situation that I think that we found was that because we're looking at how to minimize carbon, and we did this very much with a commercial, through a commercial lens, was it actually viable if you've got the greatest waste production around our cities and our conurbations to actually collect that, package it, take it a long distance away, convert it into SAF, and then bring it back to the airports, which are usually near the large conurbations. And actually what the model found, what we found from modeling, was that commercially, and even when you look at the transportation methods you use carbon-wise, it is viable for these SAF plants to be much closer to the point of use, still be viable, still achieve the carbon emission standards, etc., but that there wasn't one silver bullet that would fit all local authorities or all situations. Next slide, please, if I may, Dinah. So in order to get to this, we evolved a working model, which will be published, and it will be available to all local authorities. And really it provides that structured decision-making framework. Thank you. It helps local authorities it provides them with those decision-making framework to look at what is the situation they're faced with, what are the steps is it going to be likely to be viable at the end point, that they could come forward with a commercially and environmentally and regulatory viable system, and was it therefore worth the investment to go further and to evaluate that outcome. And that's not as obvious a question as or an obvious an answer as we may have thought at the beginning. Dinah, in her presentation, mentioned some of the challenges which we met in all of the cohorts going through the projects. And I think that this is a fairly complicated, fairly differentiated project, which and it's very much in the longer term over a period of development of 3, 4, 5, whatever years. And local authorities, particularly at the district and borough level, are not used to looking at projects in that way. That very long-term planning, strategic planning, is not something which sits comfortably. I don't think it even sits comfortably at the county levels within authorities or city governments. I think the other thing about it is that we are faced with an issue with regard to transformation to SAF is the only viable option, and a lack of feedstock. But when we actually crunched the numbers and we looked at this, first of all at the Surrey level, at the Surrey County level, then we broadened that out to the wider HSPG group and the profiling of their waste streams. And then we started to look at the London waste streams. As a very high level calculation, and using Heathrow just as an example because it was there and it's the biggest airport in the country, we looked at the entire waste production of Surrey. We looked at the methodologies and the yields of SAF from waste production. And as a rule of thumb, basically all of the waste that Surrey produces within 1 year would keep Heathrow going for 1 day. But that's not to say that it writes off, because, as I say, SAF it's not something we have a choice about. It's the only option that's currently available. But what it does mean is that in order for this to be viable, it has to reach across our current political boundaries, our current regional boundaries. This has to be a cross-regional initiative to produce the outcome and the volumes that we need. And that's entirely viable to do and possible to do. Dinah mentioned in those challenges that LGR has been, local government reorganisation, has been a backdrop to all of this. And actually what we found was that this sort of project perhaps fits better within the sunlit horizons that are coming in 2027 with the unification of local authorities, and also with the implementation of the strategic development authority, whatever shape or form that takes. But actually, it's perhaps been very illustrative of where that transition, not transformation, may actually play into this in the very near future. So what we did, we carried out a lot of stakeholder engagement with the waste authorities. We talked to the waste officers, the planning officers, the policy experts. We also had extensive discussions in terms of the state of the art of knowledge with regard with SAF developers. And we also undertook quite a detailed review of the policy and literature available, both in terms of evaluation of the most viable methodologies to convert waste to SAF, but also from the point of view of where is policy going to drive this. It is likely that as other initiatives are successful, that the amount of waste which is available and viable for recycling will possibly go down as a SAF feedstock, as other methods of recycling, perhaps more valuable methods of recycling, increase, and as legislative pressure comes on board to actually drive down the use of one-use packaging, single-use packaging, drive up the recyclable materials into those other ways of managing them. So it's a balance between need, inevitability, and what comes out and what is actually viable. So we have built a local authority toolkit. As I say, this will be made available, which will allow them in the first instance to look at the sub-region which they are responsible for, to look at the criteria which will allow them to shortlist the sites that are available within the region, which, according to the framework which we've evolved, would be good candidates to look at for SAF development. We've looked at the feedstock availability, we've looked at the profiling, which is ideal for the most likely methodologies available, and the sorts of levels which either a local authority is producing, can produce, will produce, or how much more they will need, and therefore where are the potential alliances going to come within the sub-region in order to get the volumes to make this viable. We've looked at the economic exposure from the point of view of future of waste, value of recyclable materials, and income which is available via other routes which is potentially in excess of this. That was an interesting one insofar as, because of the rarity of SAF at the moment, the potential profit margin and value of SAF is high. So that therefore is perhaps one of the more positive issues. And then we've reviewed the finance and partnership models which are available and which would be necessary to take this through to a commercial production. Next one, please, Dana.
Marcel, we might just need to be wrapping up this section in a second just to finish off the rest of the webinar.
I think we can do that, Dana. Really, the next slide, not all of it has appeared, but it has. We have shown that there is this moving window between necessity, value, and viability, and the root feedstock. We've shown that it is viable, probably, and potentially, and that the parameters which govern it are complex. And we've produced a tool which will allow other local authorities to evaluate that and determine the next steps that are fit their region and their sub-region. Thank you, Dana. We can skip the rest. We don't need to go through this.
Thank you, Marcel. Cara, I'll hand back over to you.
Thanks, Marcel. Thanks, Nusrat. And hopefully that's given everybody here a chance to sort of hear a little bit more detail about just some of the impacts from two of our projects that have been had from the Net Zero Living programme. And so just wanted to kind of also remind people that the Net Zero Living programme hasn't been here in isolation. It is part of a bigger investment that Innovate UK have been making into place-based programmes. We've invested over £500 million since 2015 because we recognise that importance of place, and these programmes are really helping to turn innovation into real-world outcomes where ultimately innovation is adopted and change will happen. Thanks, Dinah. And so in terms of the benefits, if you could move to the next slide. Yep. Yeah, in terms of the benefits, I say our projects have got individual impacts and benefits, but just a few headlines that we're seeing from emerging from the programme are here. So we're seeing a huge explosion in collaboration that has been happening across our cohort with businesses, partnerships, third sector, around 1,000 collaborations that we're reporting so far. The funding has released other funding as well. So at the moment, I say about 75 million of co-investment has been happening as a result of the programme. We're generating new IP, we're generating new patents, and we've delivered over 1,000 mentoring hours, which has really helped to increase that capacity of both businesses and places to help them to decarbonise. Okay. And so as mentioned earlier, I did say about the vast array of resources that we have available, which we'll pop a link into the chat soon. We've got the Creating Better Places handbook and the resource packs that Dinah has taken us through, which I say really bring together those key learnings and case studies and tools from the programme. But we also have technical reports and webinars and podcasts that we've been creating throughout the programme, which we want people to be able to pick up and to use and to learn from, so that we're not constantly reinventing the wheel. They are all available on our web pages. And Dinah, if you could go to the next slide. However, our funding for the programme is coming to an end tomorrow. And so as we're nearing the end of this funding, we are wanting to also share all of our outputs onto Net Zero Go. And we're really pleased to be working with the Energy Systems Catapult to get all of our materials and outputs onto Net Zero Go, where they complement and sit alongside all the resources that already sit there from lots of other work that's happening around place-based decarbonisation, and should hopefully make it a lot easier as well, certainly for local authorities to find that information in one place. Okay, and so as we draw to a close, then a huge amount has happened and changed over the last 3 or 4 years. Decarbonisation still proves itself to be a tricky problem to solve, and there's a huge amount more to do and a huge amount more to build on from the great work that's been done by the programme. But what our Net Zero Living programme has shown is that we can not only just support kind of innovation and innovators, but we can do that with lots of other objectives, that we can use that innovation, those different approaches, to improve local lives, to deliver warmer homes, to improve health outcomes, and to drive local growth and help people to transition to net zero. And so if you just move to the next one, Dinah, to wrap up, I'd really like to thank the team at Innovate UK who've been delivering the programme, plus all of our partners who have been called out during the webinar. And I would really just urge everybody to please explore those resources, reach out to those places that have experienced and explored similar challenges to yourself, and borrow with pride. I say, if a solution's there, pick it up, use it. Please do reach out. I really would like to thank you all for joining us today and for listening to the outputs of our programme.
Thank you, Cara. We've got a couple of minutes for some questions. John, you've posted a question for Nusra specifically. Would you like to come off mute and ask that question?
Thank you, Dana. I just wondered, Nusrat, if you've, as part of your project, you've had any feedback or engagement with the people who actually use the community buildings, and see if they've seen the benefits, and also if we've had any engagement with young people.
So the answer is yes to both, John. So with the communities, what we did was we tried to do some pre-installation surveys and also post-installation surveys. So that helped us to understand what the context was. And again, we had to significantly adapt how we engage with the people. We tried to do very formal questionnaires initially, but we soon realized, you know, most of these buildings it was the elderly folk that come into these buildings, and you know, they preferred more informal chats. So we had to revise how we, you know, engage with them. And the more formal feedback forms we kept for the building managers and caretakers. So we tried to do a combined approach of, you know, understanding the technical requirements of the building, but at the same time the comfort requirements of the people who actually use the buildings. And for, you know, wider capacity building and awareness, we also you know, actually partnered with the Perth and Kinross Council to youth climate change conference. So we shared our work there, and you know, that was an opportunity to engage with the youth about, you know, our project. Hope that answered your question.
Thank you. Interesting. Good to hear you've been involving wider community and young people.
Thank you, Nusrat. Thank you, John. Marcel, Barbara's got a question for you just with regards to the toolkit and its availability.
Yeah, a really simple question. Is that part of the package of stuff that's going on to Net Zero Go, or should I get that from somewhere else?
It's part of our product from the Net Zero program. Cara, will it be going on to Net Zero Go?
Yeah, so all of the final project reports will be published on Net Zero Go. So if you're a member, you'll be able to access those reports. All of the information that's currently on our web pages will be made publicly available. You wouldn't have to be a member to access the reports and the Creative Better Places handbook, etc. But it is free for local authorities to access.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Barbara. Thank you, Marcel. It just goes back to me to say thank you ever so much for joining this hour-long session. I hope you've enjoyed it. We'll make sure that these slides are available to you. We'll share them around everybody who's joined today. The web links are on here. Please do also follow the Net Zero Living programme page on LinkedIn and find out more at the Net Zero Living programme. I did pop the link to the programme webpage in the chat and also to Net Zero Go. The link is in the chat as well. Marcel.
Just one comment, if I may, Dinah, and that's just to say that the finding from all of the cohorts, I think, was that none of this work would have been possible within a business as usual framework. And that's down to the funding, yes, but it's also down to the framework which was created by Innovate UK and by facilitators like Urban Foresight, which allowed this to evolve. It was a map which we had to make as we went along, and it was the only way to do it. So it was really innovative in that way.
Brilliant place to close, Marcel. Thank you. Thank you, Cara. Nusrat, thank you to you as well. And thanks everybody for joining. Have a great rest of your day.